Green and Gold releases this weekend through Fathom Events. As an intimate story about humble Wisconsin dairy farmers, the film maybe isn't as flashy as modern audiences have come to expect, but is its meditative, very character-driven story exactly the type of film that Hollywood needs more of? I have seen it, so let's talk about it. So in recent decades, movie theaters are just often dominated by big franchises and just bombastic spectacle, leaving less space for more modest, human-centric stories. Thus, I think Green and Gold, much like the humble farmers at the heart of its story, is just the type of movie that I think is easy to overlook. But the debut film by brothers Andes and Davin Lindwall, who are themselves descendants of Midwestern dairy farmers, is just a deeply personal tale that I think is told with an almost irresistible earnestness, and I just really enjoyed it. As a refreshing antidote to just the hollow spectacle of many Hollywood films, Green and Gold is a very inspirational and heartfelt story about the communal bonds and faith that make us human. And let me quickly just mention that I actually had the opportunity to chat with the Lindwall brothers about this film, which I'll link below, but it's just a really good conversation, so I encourage you guys, go check that out. But anyways, inspired by true events, Green and Gold focuses on a very down on his luck dairy farmer who, faced with crippling debt, bets his farm on a very long shot Super Bowl win by his beloved Green Bay Packers. And obviously the movie's title emphasizes the sports aspect, and the Green Bay Packers organization was actually involved as a partner in the project. But Green and Gold really isn't a football movie. Rather, I think Green and Gold is just primarily a story about life. It weaves together kind of fundamental pillars of the human experience, whether that's family or farming or faith, to explore the simple goodness and beauty that routinely gets overlooked just in the busyness of our lives. And the film's storytelling philosophy is perhaps best just encapsulated by a quote from actor Craig T. Nelson's character, in which he muses, "He's no artist, he moves too fast to experience anything." And Green and Gold is just a film that practices what it preaches, with a synergy between its central themes and just the way that the story itself has been crafted together. And by that, I mean that this movie just never seems to be in a big hurry to race audiences to the next dramatic plot point. Rather, it's just very deliberate to dwell in the quiet moments of the characters, or to linger on a beautiful shot of the stunning farmland landscape. And I do think some viewers may grow just a little antsy for a brisker pace or more action, but in a way, that's kind of the point of this film, that we've just grown unaccustomed to simplicity and silence in our world of constant media and distractions. Of course, commendable as the film's philosophical message may be, nobody wants to go watch a boring movie, but I don't think that this is, I think, an essential ingredient in allowing Green and Gold sort of snapshot of life story to remain entertaining is the characters. I think kind of in the absence of just flashy action or very exaggerated drama, the characters themselves are compelling and just enjoyable to spend time with. Actor Craig T. Nelson, I think, is perfectly cast in the role as Buck, a very curmudgeonly old dairy farmer, and he is joined by actress Madison Lawler as Jenny, who is Buck's granddaughter. And I think while Nelson's character may represent the soul of this film, Jenny is definitely the beating heart, because I think she is excellent. I think she's able to communicate the very clear internal tensions inside without overacting or overly relying on just expositional dumps of dialogue. And the Lindwall brothers clearly pull from the well of their own experiences and fashion the story as community insiders, which I just think results in a film that feels like it depicts real people living real lives in a very real place. And we'll get into it a bit more in the theme section, but I think part of this film's very authentic depiction of life is just the way that God and faith are approached, because Christianity is very central to this story, but in a way that never feels overbearing or forced. The faith elements are present more as a natural outflowing of the characters, rather than the characters ever feeling just mere mouthpieces for the filmmakers to sermonize their own personal faith. As far as content to consider, things going on the surface of this, really not a whole lot. There is some minor profanity just scattered throughout. I counted maybe about 14, with 10 of those being a word beginning with the letter H, as well as just several uses of other words like crap. For violence, no violence in this film. Lastly, for sexuality, there is an older man that is shown on several occasions doing stretches in his underwear, but not at all in any kind of sensual way. And there is a husband that flirts with his wife by telling her to get those sweet buns over here. As far as themes, worldviews, things going on beneath the surface of this, near the end of this film, Jenny asks her neighbor the question, do you think that God cares about all the things we try and do, just the normal things? And the older neighbor doesn't provide a direct answer, but he does observe that there's just a holiness to the way that you guys care for things. And I think at its core, Green and Gold is really a movie just about finding God's presence in ordinary things. Buck has a very simple spirituality. He lacks the same commitment and devotion to the church that his wife clearly has, but he also just obviously has a connection with God in ways that he might not always be able to clearly articulate. And just in my own experience, I think most often faith-based genre movies attempt to communicate the special revelation of scripture and the gospel in a more evangelistic sense. I think in contrast, Green and Gold is more a story of general revelation, kind of more reflective of the Apostle Paul's writing in Romans 1:20. It's a story about kind of being drawn to God by encountering his invisible qualities, clearly communicated through his beautiful creation. Although, and I think importantly, the film also does avoid a pantheistic sense that creation itself is divine. By the end of this film, kind of having encountered God's presence out in the world, both Buck and Jenny appear to ultimately have been led to God as a person, kind of having slipped out of church mid-service for most of the film to go catch a football game on TV. They do both end the story as active participants in the church congregation, with Jenny singing praise in the choir. So in the end, Green and Gold's deliberately placed plot and just meditative tone may not appeal to all audiences, but I do think this is the type of story that I'm glad still has a place in Hollywood. Because hey, I enjoy big spectacle, action-heavy blockbusters as much as anyone, but sometimes it is valuable just to be reminded of the heroism of everyday people, and not just those wearing capes and battling villains from across some fictional multiverse. So with a wholesome message and just an unwavering commitment to its identity, Green and Gold is a timely challenge just to pause, open our eyes, just appreciate the unsung heroes and overlooked beauty in the world all around us. But hey, I would love to hear what you think. If you guys are checking out this movie, hey, maybe you love football or just want to see a kind of character-driven drama, don't be shy, jump into the comment section, let's have a conversation about it. If you haven't done so too, encourage you guys, subscribe to the channel, become a Collider, got lots of other movie reviews, got our Faith and Pop Culture podcast, got interviews, just other fun stuff. Would love to have you guys be a part of that. But most of all, thank you for watching, stay safe, and continue to collide with your world for Christ.